Ferrari just revealed the new Luce, and I genuinely don't think I've ever been this confused by a new Ferrari. And I'm pretty sure you felt the same thing too, because generally when Ferrari releases a new car, especially something this important, because this is Ferrari's first ever fully electric production car. And there's usually that certain feeling that comes with the reveal of a new Ferrari. Excitement, joy, curiosity, you start reading about it and you start looking at every detail and start imagining what Ferrari could have came up with this time. But with the Luce, the reaction felt quite different. A lot of people, just like me, were left staring and wondering, is this actually a Ferrari? I definitely felt the same way about it too, but hear me out on this one. The more I looked at it, the more I realized that Ferrari's biggest mistake wasn't necessarily the car itself. But yeah, I know the car is disgusting, I know that, but I think the way they chose to present and position this car was actually worse than the car itself. I'll explain that in a moment, because I think, in my opinion, that this car doesn't feel like it was designed with Ferrari enthusiasts in mind at all. But while we are on the design, let's talk about why this car doesn't look like a Ferrari at all. Ferrari worked with Johnny Ive and his team from Loveform on this project. The same Johnny Ive that was responsible for designing the iPhone, the Mac, and so many other iconic Apple products. And you can see it right away. The whole thing looks clean, futuristic, and minimal, and almost like a concept tech product. There's nothing wrong with that in itself, but the problem is Ferrari. Ferrari was never just about technology. Ferrari has always been about emotion. It's about seeing a car and instantly feeling something because of the shape, the aggression, the presence. That mix of racing heritage, performance, and luxury all coming together to create something unforgettable. That is what people expect when they hear the Ferrari name. Well, I guess until now at least. So when Ferrari announced that they were making a fully electric car, even though we don't all love electric cars, we were actually kind of excited. Because Ferrari has always been incredible at taking the latest technology available at the time and mixing it with their racing heritage and the amazing design most of the time, and creating something special. That's why expectations were so high. But when the Luce was unveiled, a lot of people were just left shocked, confused, and had no idea what they were looking at. I feel like the main issue was that Ferrari designed and positioned this car as a tech product first and as a Ferrari second. And that is what kind of changed everything. I read the press release, and more on that later, but if you read the press release yourself, you would realize that this car wasn't really designed and sort of positioned for Ferrari enthusiasts and Ferrari's normal customers, and rather it was designed for tech enthusiasts. And that's why I say that the positioning of this car is completely wrong. And that brings me on to what Ferrari should have done, in my opinion, of course. This brings me on to my original point that the car was designed to be a tech product first, then a Ferrari second. And like it or not, that was actually intentional. They actually wanted it to look like a piece of tech rather than a Ferrari. And this takes me back to the press release notes on the Ferrari website. If you go through it, you'll realize that they positioned this car as a piece of tech to appeal to the younger generation, rather than a sports car, a supercar, to appeal to, a car guy or a Ferrari enthusiast. So from the get-go, the goal was to create a car that's going to appeal to the younger, more tech-savvy generation. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ferrari and Loveform thought that there was a market over here that they need to capitalize on. And as a business, yeah, you would want to get onto a market that you think you can capitalize on. And yeah, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the way they did it was not ideal. This is what they should have done, in my opinion. Instead of designing and positioning this car as a Ferrari, they should have presented it and designed it as, hear me out on this one, as an Apple car, with designing and engineering in collaboration with Ferrari. This car should have never had a Ferrari logo on it. It should have been the first Apple car that Apple collaborated with Ferrari to engineer and create a product with the best tech from Apple combined with the best car enthusiast, racing heritage, race car brand like Ferrari, and putting them both together to create the ideal or the perfect supercar for the new tech savvy generation. That's what they should have done. Or at least that's how they should have positioned this reveal. Because they did a good job engineering the car. Like if you look at the specs on paper, this car is really good in terms of performance. 1,000 horsepower, 0 to 60 in like 2.5 seconds. And these numbers are really good. I don't want to, go too deep into the stats, but like it is in line with all the performance EVs from, competing brands. There's nothing wrong with the car except for the badge that it has on it. If that was an Apple logo, the world would be excited and invested in it instead of being, disappointed and disgusted in the car. And Apple could have used this as an advantage. They could have used the Ferrari name to hype up their new Apple car, saying that the suspension, the chassis, the battery, the motors were all engineered and manufactured by Ferrari, and all the tech inside was manufactured and created by Apple. And that could have been one of the main selling points of the car. The biggest tech company in the world collaborated with the biggest and most iconic car brands in the world to create this new car for the new tech-savvy generation. That would have worked. Everyone would have been excited for it. It would have worked a lot better than what they did. And that's my opinion, of course. And while we are on the topic of the younger generation, that kind of brings me on to another issue that I feel like the Luce will be held back from being successful. And that's the price. $650,000. Yes, you heard that right. The starting price is $650,000. That's like above $100,000 more than a Ferrari Purosangue. The brand's first four-door super SUV with a massive 6.5 liter screaming V12 engine. And this car's electric. And that's also like $200,000 more than a Ferrari 296. $150,000 more than a Ferrari SF90, and so on. You get it, and it's a stupid amount of money to spend, on an electric car, and we all know how fast and how badly electric cars depreciate. $650,000 before options. Like, who in this younger generation or this younger audience has that kind of money just lying around? Like, who is Ferrari talking about? Who from this younger generation is going to actually want, or even if they wanted to, will be able to go out and buy this car? And who would want to buy this car over, like the Ferraris I've mentioned, like a 296, SF90, the new Dodici Cylindri, an old 458 or 488 Pista or 458 Speciale or F12 or 812? Like, who's going to take this car over any of the cars I just mentioned? And by the way, the cars that I've just mentioned, most of them are cheaper than this car. And as I've said, even if this appeals to someone in the younger generation, they do not have that kind of money lying around. And if they're in their right mind, of course they're going to get an F12 or an 812 or a 296 over this. So yeah, Ferrari really positioned this car completely wrong. Like, even if you take the design to the side, like, who thought about this? And whoever you are, you probably need to go see someone. Because this is one of the most disappointing decisions I've ever seen from Ferrari or any other supercar manufacturer. But if this car had an Apple logo on it and was built and designed in collaboration with Ferrari, as I've said, it would have done, I'd had confidence that it would have done a lot better than, what we've just seen. But I don't know, maybe I guess the Ferrari CEO and all the head executives, as well as the marketing team at Ferrari, had other ideas. But yeah, that's kind of it for me. Let me know what you guys think about, what this car would have been, or where it would have been if it was an Apple car instead of a Ferrari car. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.